again just a few minutes ago. Apparently a large plane, according to that eyewitness Jim Friedel, vantage point from Hoboken, that as you look at the picture from our chopper now arriving at the scene, Jim Friedel in Hoboken said it appeared to bank sharply and smash directly, perhaps purposefully, into, oh my goodness,
oh God,
there's another one. Oh my goodness, there's another one.
This seems to be on purpose.
Oh my goodness, now it's obvious, I think, that there's a second plane just crashed into the World Trade Center. I think we have a terrorist act of proportions that we cannot begin to imagine at this juncture. A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
oh my God.
My goodness.
But you couldn't tell much more from 14th Street.
Now, we had an earlier eyewitness that told us he thought it appeared to be a 737. What you saw was a small, perhaps twin-engine airplane?
No, not a twin engine. It was a jet. Medium
I
to
see something
smallish
that's
proportions. Not a
unimaginable. I
big
see
airliner, though.
what is a
Okay.
police commissioner's worst nightmare.
Okay, so it appears
This is
to
a
be
situation that obviously was well planned, well coordinated, and the loss of life that's taking place down there is just incredible, and is going to strain the emergency services in this city.
We got I heard on the radio that one of the towers was on fire, and we went to High Point in our building, which is on the 25th floor, and you had a clear view of the both World Trade Centers, and the one tower was smoking hard.
Are you hearing any specific information? Are you hearing anything about the number of injuries, the number of fatalities, the number of people in that building, those buildings? Are you getting any of that information from?
Well, I know there are 50,000 people who work in the World Trade Center. I know that every ambulance.
Were
and
you
every
close
fire
enough to
company
see or get a general idea of what
and
kind of plane
has
that
been
was
called
that
in
flew in the
and
second
dispatched
time?
there.
Well, I'm not an expert on planes, but it wasn't didn't seem like a big passenger jet. It was a smaller type plane because it made some pretty radical turn, and they were flying low, and you're not used to see big planes flying over Manhattan because I don't think you're allowed to, but it was pretty tough.
And explain to me again what your vantage point is, where you are in the city looking at this.
We're in Chelsea,
I cannot say this is something that people never believed they would see in the United States because, of course, Oklahoma City was had that reaction. Americans experienced terrorism.
And once again, describe for us what you saw as that plane went to the second building.
That plane just flew straight into the second building on the downtown side of the city. Just a huge explosion.
Planes was designated crash in each tower. That was bringing one down. It connotes the level of planning and sophistication and extreme logistical ability that probably makes this singularly the largest, most well-coordinated act of terrorism, not just in U.S. history, but probably in modern times.
Yeah,
Unprecedented.
And every time you say that, I'm going to go
now evacuating their own
time you say that, I keep thinking of how we are told time
even
and time
further
and time
to
again.
move that to. Something that is striking about this today is that this is indicative of, with a car bomb at the State Department, a plane crash into the Pentagon, two planes designated to crash into each tower of the World Trade Center, bringing one down. It connotes the level of planning and sophistication and extreme logistical ability that probably makes this singularly the largest, most well-coordinated act of terrorism, not just in U.S. history, but probably in modern times.
Yeah, and
unprecedented.
And every time you say that, I'm going to go immediately to Washington.
200 other emergency personnel with the concentrated effort of the two rescue attempts. The one last evening, and then we switched our approach to get into a better angle, and there was we obviously pulled out the second survivor this morning. We did not want to leave. They physically came in and took the equipment out of our hands. We've been out there for no less than 12 hours, and they came off the line.
Thank you very much, John, which would please call us back as soon as you have something which would call into question immediately, of course, the notion of counter-terrorism in an incident like this. Now, nobody who was watching television, watching Good Morning America today, for example, saw at least those of us working on television, saw a first plane crash into the building. Much of the country watching television this morning will have seen the second plane crash into the other tower. And we have, as you can see from a distance there, until we get our cameras on the ground, producing material to put on the air, it's pretty limited view, so we have no idea what the evacuation procedure is.
Shade of purple. Very odd. I'm not sure why that is. All right, good answer. Now, the other thing
at this time,
we've noticed
all elevators are out in both towers, according to the rescue workers on the scene. They put out an urgent call for Scott Air
We saw a shadow. It looked like a plane. Next thing we know, it was boom, and the floor started shaking. And then we saw debris fall down, and next thing we know, we had to get out of the building. We stuck on the stairs for a while. We finally got down to the lobby. Then we get to the lobby, it was this big explosion.
I thought we'd be able to unrun it, but we couldn't. It was pitch black.
Temperatures are pretty much seasonable for most of the nation in the 70s, 80s throughout much of the U.S. Desert Southwest, of course, over 100 degrees again. Take a look at the highlights from today. New York City, beautiful day here. 80 degrees today. St. Louis, 83. Albuquerque, looking at 87. San Diego, pleasant 74. Where rain, see rain. We'll see some scattered showers to the west, to the west. Most of the west will be dry. Look for flooding and flooding in southern Texas, central and southern Florida.
I don't believe that's legally allowed on an airplane. I have to check with the FAA, but I would bet you that you're not legally allowed to bring that onto an airplane.
I'm sure you're not. It's just I'm just thinking of things that practically you could try to
flight channel. Today is some of the knives had plastic handles. That's another interesting point because that can go through the metal detector and plastic isn't picked up as something you would need to be concerned about.
Yes, and we've talked about the fact that the wife of the Solicitor General, Barbara Olson.
Significance there of anything?
Well, they're very large planes, and on long flights they have a lot of fuel, so that type of plane would do maximum damage in terms of explosion. If you used a narrow body on a short haul, you would have less jet fuel
that it is not illegal, at least it wasn't before today, to bring a box cutter
get as big a bomb as you could to explode.
A large plane, according to that eyewitness Jim Friedel, vantage point from Hoboken, that as you look at the picture from our chopper now arriving at the scene, Jim Friedel in Hoboken said it appeared to bank sharply and smash directly, perhaps purposefully, into, oh my goodness, oh God, there's another one.
The men apparently were running late for the flight, maybe the root of the dispute with the other guy, perhaps over the parking space, but their luggage did not make the flight. So now the FBI is processing their luggage, in which sources say there are Arabic language training manuals on flying. They've developed 5 names, and I'm trying to learn whether those names match up with the passenger names they were looking at. But interestingly, investigators tell us 2 of them are brothers. One of them is supposed to be a pilot. So we are starting to see, in the very early stages of the investigation, hints that there is a level of professionalism and proficiency with aircraft if these are the right people that they're looking at.
U.S. officials, meanwhile, are saying the evidence is mounting as to who is behind these terrorist attacks. They are refusing to publicly name names this morning, but all fingers are pointing at one man. NBC's Andrea Mitchell is in Washington, D.C. this morning with more on that. Andrea, good morning.
Good morning, Katie. Well, in your interview earlier today with Colin Powell, he said that this is a declaration of war against America and a declaration of war against all of civilization. And you can tell that they are building a case. He said that evidence is mounting. Privately, officials are saying that they do not believe that this came from a state hostile to the United States, such as Iraq. This was not state-sponsored terrorism. They believe that only one person has the ability to mount something this sophisticated and this well-coordinated, and that is Osama bin Laden.
Hitting an hour, another had straight into those towers with such force that even at the midpoint of the building, or in that case 2/3 up, something had happened to so totally weaken the infrastructure that this was like peeling as manna from an area in the west, except that it was full of people. Or had many good about it today, and certainly confused as listening to the mayor, listening to the governor of the state, both of whom we talked to, listening to the senator in charge of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, listening to all of our analysts, listening to everybody.
Well,
the country is still very much in the middle of,
obviously, is one which
if not immediate post-event chaos, certainly in terms of trauma, and trying to get a handle on what the hell's been going on here.
Rally behind our president, and I am confident that our military and our president will find out the perpetrators of this outrage, and we will not only punish those responsible, but ensure that something like this never happens again.
And now new developments overnight in Boston where 2 of the flights originated. 5 suspects have been identified and a car seized from the Logan Airport parking lot. But there still is much we do not know and may not know for a very long time.
Commission on Aviation Safety and Dr. Jenkins and I work closely with Vice President Gore's Commission on Aviation Safety and Security in the 21st century, put on a major conference at George Washington. One of the 3 tracks was on aviation terrorism in the 21st century, and one of the concerns of a number of the international experts we had at that conference was the increasing aviation as a target has been raised.
What could possibly happen next? The FBI, within the last couple of years, has launched a very aggressive media campaign telling people that Washington, D.C. was right.
She gets into the cars, too, like there were cars like down the street.
So if there was thousands of thermite cutter charges going off under these explosive conditions, the atomized byproduct of thermite, liquid molten iron, would be formed into small spheres, just like when you sneeze. It's an explosive force, liquid due to its surface tension, forming itself into spheres, almost as diameter of a human hair, which is what officials find in the dust. So these cooling, falling molten iron droplets could easily account for the so-called toasted cars. So that's one accountable mechanism for that phenomenon.
Which we find in the World Trade Center dust, small metal filings, which could account for the file cabinets, the 220 acres of metal decking. And so that's one possibility. Others have posited other possibilities, such as what Abraham was talking about with advanced weapons.
I didn't say anything of the sort.
It's a possibility that Judy Wood's is advanced, so I'm just mentioning. Is that okay? Give it just a minute.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's because it's important to respond to. So we don't know much about weapons that we don't know much about, right? They're not. We don't have the understanding of what else might be available, given that it's not public information. So what we do at Architects and Engineers Conjure is present in the limited time that we have the most solid scientific forensic data that we can give you, that you can take to the American people, your friends, neighbors, colleagues, architects, engineers, government officials, media representatives, and that they won't think you are a kook. Okay, this is solid evidence that we present. Now, I'm not going to present every piece of evidence out there that I can't explain. What good does that do me or you? That's your next question.
ringing and the damping of the oscillations of the tower after it was hit by a plane. It implies something very massive, moving fast, hit the plane, for example.
Here, this is the collapse, and it's
Now,
literally, you can just watch this.
These fellows, though, people, not just men, people that promote the no planes theory also have the characteristic that they will vehemently and personally attack those who challenge the no planes theory.
The DC Police Headquarters.
I've run into that. And early on, actually, and I can name them. I think you may know the names. Unfortunately,
both collapsed within relatively short order of each other, unable to withstand the damage
who lost
from those
her job
plane attacks.
Has joined
in each case,
this
a
group
large
and
plane, perhaps a 757,
gone in with those methods, and it's just regrettable.
The building.
I think really we need more unity and to agree on the important areas where the evidences are very strong. I went through 4 areas.
We're West Broadway and Barclay. Very difficult to breathe here, but look around. This must have been ground zero where this thing blew up. Car after car after car. Buses completely obliterated and burned straight down to the steel. Behind me, that gaping hole, that's where one of the 2 towers stood. It's not there. And as you can see above me, the fire in this adjacent building just continues to rage. It's a surreal environment. It's almost impossible to describe, again, except to make a war correlation. Whoever said somebody declared war on us, it certainly looks like it, doesn't it?
For any adult to communicate some fear and some sadness.
How honest should we be? In other words, I struggled with that last night. I struggled with how much to tell. My fight was to tell. How fight is to have to be very aware of what goes on around.
If you don't strike back, you look vulnerable. So the United States is literally, as Lark said, in a box.
Yes, I think that's very true. In the immediacy of the situation, it's very important that we not overreact to the immediacy of this situation. In the long term, what's terribly important is this is not a war won with bombs and with retaliation of Delta forces. It's a war for people's lives.
And then we obviously pulled out the second survivors this morning. We did not want to leave.
The State's concern is that there are no front lines in our country. Civilians, children are targeted by Israel, by other nations, by the United States when we attacked Iraq. So the United States is
reinforcements now.
They've anticipated that the lower Manhattan houses in New York City will fill up.
And what's really important to understand with these, particularly the young individuals who get incorporated into the group, this is killing in the name of God. It becomes a sacred obligation under an extremely radical interpretation of the Quran that they are in fact defending their faith against their believers and retaliating for injustices done. So it's got a
More debris falling from a nearby building, the World Trade Center. We're at West Broadway and Barclay. Very difficult to breathe here, but look around. This must have been ground zero where this thing blew up. Car after car after car.
I see a sign outside that just gives me a reference of Barclay Street. As you can see all around here, the windows have been blown completely out. And as we take a walk towards the front of the building here, you want to take a look outside. If you have never been to war, like I have never been to war, then this is what it looks like. We don't know what that building is. We don't know where this building is, but they're obviously on fire. Maybe there's a chance that they could collapse. I've been on this earth for 37 years. I've never been to a war, but I can only imagine that This is as close as I've ever come.
Again today, we are a nation that mourns. Again today, we are a nation that mourns. Again today, take into our hearts and minds those who perished on this site 1 year ago. And also those who came to toil in the rubble, to bring order out of chaos, to bring order and those who throughout these 12 months have struggled to help us make struggle of ours despair. Now we join with our fellow Americans. Now we join with our fellow Americans, led by President George W. led by President South Lawn, the White House, South Lawn, the White House, Washington.